Thanks for coming. Please, obviously, leave if you don't. So thank you, everyone, for coming today. Really good to see you all. Today, I'm going to be talking about using Google Drive as the storage solution on Android. Okay? We're not going to be breaking the bounds of modern science. I'm going to talk to you about files and where you can put them and where you should put them. Okay? Personally, I think Drive is the perfect solution for Android. And I'm going to tell you why, obviously. I'm in love. There's a heart for me. That's really great. What will you do with this? You will allow your users to have seamless cross-device, cross-platform, cross-application, cross-user experiences. Okay, sorry that was a big run-through, but that's the essential point of it. Okay? If you do that for people, they will be happy. Put the user first, focus on the user, and the rest will follow. Okay? That's our goal here. Keep the users happy. If I can jump straight into a use case, this is a personal situation I had. I have a child. I'm quite a paranoid parent, and I like taking data about things. There are plenty of applications for Android, for various handheld devices that collect baby data. Okay, can you imagine every time your baby does a poop, you record it. Every time your baby has a nap, you record it. Every time any biological function you can imagine, medicine, this kind of thing. So there are loads of these applications, lots and lots and lots. And I went through them one by one, and I found what I thought was a really good one. Okay, it's called Baby ESP, and it is a really great application. It's perfect for the use case. When you install it, you have to set up some information. So at the start, I set in the name of the child, the date of birth, these kind of things. And that's the configuration it needs. Okay? And you can see along the top there, these are screenshots from the actual application. I removed all the data. So you can track information about your baby. You can see at the top there, they've got nursing and sleeping and diapers and this kind of thing. So really great, has everything I need. This is an example. You record a session, tells you how long it was, what it involved. You can add some notes about it. Another example, you can imagine me geeking out on this, can't you? So I'm collecting data. It's giving me these beautiful reports. Even gives me, look at that, really lovely. So it's fulfilling all my paranoid parent desires, okay? Everything I want. Until one day I bought an Nexus 7. So who has a Nexus 7? Yeah, great. Amazing device, aren't they? Really, really good. So I thought, this is great. I'm going to set this up in my child's room. It will be like the permanent data collection device. This is true. Thanks, guys. Good to see you. Thanks for coming. So really great. And then I found there was a problem, because I installed this, but it wasn't configured correctly, so I had to configure it. Okay, that was a bit of a nuisance. Even worse than that, I found that when I was changing configuration values on one device and then looking on the other device, they wouldn't be updating. So I would get two versions of configuration out of sync. That's really starting to get a bit painful. Even worse than that, the data wasn't available. So I was collecting all this data on one device, I was collecting all this data on the other device, and the reports were not collecting the data. So this was really, really painful for me. Okay, really painful. And in fact, I'd go as far as to say this is a bug. Okay, my data is siloed in two separate places, in two separate devices. It's not useful to me. What is this application doing? This application is treating my device as the user. Okay, don't treat me as a device, treat me as a person with multiple devices. Okay, that's a holistic approach to who I am and what I'm doing, and that's what you want to do. So Drive is a technology that solves this. So this is a simple drawing. I have data in one place and I have data in another place. If I had something in the middle to synchronize all this data, then that would be great. Now Drive perfectly solves this solution, perfectly solves this problem. And there are loads of baby monitoring software. This could be the difference between your software being 5.0 stars or 4.8 stars. And that makes a huge difference. So treat the user as a user, okay, holistically, and they will install your app. Look, 1,000 results. Okay, I only got through the first 25 before I gave up looking for one that actually did what I wanted it to do. Yay, happy user, me. Synchronized data. Of course, just an aside, Android is just one part of this. I've spoken about cross-device experiences, but obviously cross-platform. Now, the Google Drive SDK is available on any platform that you have. Anywhere you can make an HTTP request, you can have Google Drive. Go and check out our quick starts. Again, you have an application that works on your Android device, but how great would it be if your web version also had synchronized data? So that's just an aside. We're focusing on Android today, but all platforms have this. And multiple devices, okay? We used to ask the question to the crowd, who has multiple devices? And then one or two people would stick their hand up. Who doesn't have multiple devices? Seriously, who doesn't have multiple devices? Okay. So, you see, my son's mom, who collects data here, does have multiple devices, and it's just a thing. So yeah, everyone has multiple devices, so cater to people, okay? And I think this is part of a general problem. Where is my data? Where is my data? Where is it stored? And specifically in our case, where are my files? Okay, now I was thinking of a good image to put on this slide, and I was starting to think of my history of files. Okay, go back 20 years when I started collecting, like PDFs of medical data, whatever it was. And I've slowly realized that I've lost all of that stuff. Okay, some of it is on a hard drive of an old laptop that I can't even find the power supply to. I need to unscrew the thing and take the hard drive out and find an adapter and all this nasty stuff. It's all lost. It's all totally, totally lost. The last place I want to store a file is on my hard drive. I don't know if you guys are gradually getting into that same thought. I just don't want it on my hard drive. Even worse than that, I don't want it on my phone's SD card. How am I going to get to that? Okay, I've got old phones. I can't charge them. They won't start. Someone stepped on it. I just can't get that stuff out. So my files are lost. Tears in the rain. I know, really sad. It got me really depressed. I found a sad picture. So that's that. Store my data where I need it. This is somewhat of a plea. Okay, as a user, please store my data where I can get it anywhere. Obviously, the cloud is a perfect place for that. Store it somewhere where I can share it with people, cross-user applications. Okay, Drive is the perfect place for that. Store it somewhere where I can share it with different applications. A file, the abstraction of a file is perfect for this. You have files on your hard drive, you share it with other applications. Again, Drive extends this abstraction into the cloud. You can share your Drive files with other applications. So, Google Drive, store my data where I need it, when I need it. Especially useful on Android. Why? Okay, so I could be talking about any cloud file storage solution, and you know there are plenty of them out there. Why is it especially useful on Android? Well, like everyone who's got the phone has already got a Google account with 5 gigabytes of storage. Isn't that obvious? Doesn't that make sense? I think that really makes good, strong sense. Use that storage. It's there. They don't have to sign up again. You will get one permission screen asking for access, and your application can save that authorization and just use it. Yay. No additional sign up, nothing else. Use that data. It's there. So how do we do it? Right, I've got a demo for you, okay, where I wrote a couple of things, and I want to show you the demo. Now, we've had networking issues. So I've actually recorded the demo. I'm kind of hoping we don't have to watch that recording because it's a bit jittery. So let's have a look. Now, the kind of application I wrote is like a baby data collection application. It's nowhere near, I'll turn it on in a second. It's nowhere near as good as the ones you see online, but it gives you a vague idea. Right, hang on. Okay, so I'm using a wired network connection that has never been tested before. So we may have to jump to the video, and I'm sorry about that. So what is this? Okay, you can see on there, you can see the various things, jigsaw, banana, nap. I've segregated data into 3 different types, either your baby sleeps, or your baby plays, or your baby eats. Pretty accurate if you've got children. So what am I going to do? I'm just going to go right ahead and add, what should he eat? Suggestions from the crowd. Steak. So I add that there. And look, it's appeared on the other device. Step 1 done. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you. I told you we're not breaking the bounds of modern science, but imagine if that was the real baby ESP as I used it. I've immediately got the data synchronized on both my devices. And we'll talk about how we do that and what backend we use for that in a second. You see it's going a bit crazy, so we'll move straight on. The other part is the settings. Now, this is a pretty standard setting page that you would have for an application. It uses Android's shared preferences. Android people know that's a persistent store by which you can put some key values, essentially, and share them globally across your application. Okay? So we're going to go ahead, and we're going to change some of these. So I'm going to give my son another middle name. James, I think, sounds pretty good. And he's moved on to combination, and let's see. So this sometimes takes a few times. Why? Because we're at the mercy of Android's sync architecture. That's a good thing, being at the mercy of this, but it might mean that it syncs now. It might not sync now. It might sync in like 20 minutes' time. Not exactly great for this demo. So you can see I'm pressing the buttons. Please work, please work, please work. If not, I'll just reset it and do it again. Yep. Let's try again. Obviously, my implementation is bad, okay? But I'm going to tell you the things that I did and why it's useful. So let's try. So they told me to leave it in airplane mode. Oh, there we go. So what's happened here is it's synchronized back to the original version. That's a bad bug. I've got the engineer in the front row. There will be beatings. But you can see. Let's try just one more time. Otherwise, I'm going to have to get you to use your imaginations. Again, not good for geeks, but like, sorry. You're like dying for it to work. Please work, please work. Look at that. Did anyone notice? Yeah, okay. So again, we're at the mercy of the Android sync architecture, so I'm sorry about that. So that's the demo. Really, 2 simple things. We'll switch back to the presentation. So that was the demo. I'm going to talk a bit about how we did that and how it relates back to some of the points I made earlier. Oh, this was the video. Look, you can see it's a bit shaky, but we don't have to watch it, which is good. Right, so we're storing data here in 2 different places. Okay, we had 2 fundamentally different paradigms here. We have one where we're regularly collecting data that we can access and use for reports, for various things like that. The other part is application state. And Google Drive conveniently has 2 ways that you can store data, and they match up very well with these 2 things. So the first one is Appdata. And this is a feature we launched recently, which gives you, the developer, a folder inside a user's Google Drive. And that folder has special properties that make it useful for this. So that's the first part. The second part is the actual data. Now, we can just store that as a regular file in Drive. Okay, in our case, you can see the top one, baby times DB. I'm actually storing it as a Google Spreadsheet. Okay, now you might think, oh, that's not really a good solution. Well, we'll talk about it. I think it is actually a very good solution for this. So we have 2 different places, Appdata for state and Google Drive regular files for actual data or images or notes or videos, whatever you want to put in there. So how does it look? This is a recent screenshot. It just shows exactly what we had there, and it's in Google Spreadsheets. Remember, put my data where I need it. Okay? I want to make graphs. I want to make charts. I I want to do cool things like that, okay? I want to be paranoid and really like soak in this thing. So I think Google Spreadsheets is a good place to put my data there. But I just wanted to illustrate that it's not, don't just have to use Google Spreadsheets. It can be a file that has anything in there. Now, that says binary up there. Obviously, it's not binary. Does anyone know what file format that is? There's a clue. Anyone? Yeah, well, no. Close. So this is a SQLite 3 database. Why have I mentioned this? Because actually, when you're writing Android apps, that's what you do. Now, who's written an Android app that collects data of any kind? Okay, so it's pretty easy. And I wanted to design the application as you normally would. So I create a data schema, it has a single table, and I just collect data into that. That's my app. Okay, that's probably exactly how Baby ESP works and all the other data collection baby apps. The clever thing, the extra thing that we do, is we ensure that that data is regularly synchronized with a Google spreadsheet. Okay, you don't want to do it immediately. You don't want to send it straight up the wire. You want to queue this for later, for when the user has access, when the system decides that synchronization is what you want to do. Android is clever how it does this, how it decides this. So we let that. And it also gives you the benefit of the user being able to select that checkbox that says, do I want to synchronize this app or not? Do I want to synchronize this account or not? So it's really useful to use that architecture. So we write our app. Normally, we just have a single database, a single table in our database, 3 columns, and that's that. And the user input goes straight into there. Okay? So treat it like a local, how you normally would with Android, and the rest will follow. Okay? How do we do the export? Well, now I'm going to show you some snippets of really easy, obvious code. Okay? We use CSV. I know that's a bit embarrassing to use CSV for anything, but actually it's really, really useful. We have a single table, and we want a single sheet. It's pretty much just CSV. So how do we get the data out? We ask for an export link on the Google spreadsheet, and it gives us a URL by which we can download CSV. So we get that, we pass the CSV. You notice I didn't put any commas or quotation marks or anything crazy in my notes because that would break my parser. But that's all we have for now. So export it like that. On the other side, you can give CSV, you can put it into Google Drive, and you ask it to convert. So you say convert, and Google Drive is clever enough. If you're looking at this snippet, the content variable, that is something that knows about the actual content and the MIME type. So Google Drive is clever. It looks at the MIME type, text CSV, and it says, well, actually, I can convert that into a spreadsheet. So it just does. So what have I done here, just with this data? I've made it portable across devices. Okay, I showed you that. That's really, 2 devices, portable data. But it's not just that. It's also portable across applications. What if this schema was public? What if all baby data applications used the same schema? Well, then I could share my data in between each one of them. I know, you're smiling. That's amazing, isn't it? Now you're talking. Now you're talking proper sharing data, making the data useful, putting it in a place that is useful. And finally, just wanted to mention my wife. She wants to get involved in this. So, it would be nice if we could share the single database. Sometimes I'm not at home, sometimes she is. So the data is now portable across users as well. Okay? Really, really important, really useful. A file on my hard drive, I can't give that to someone. I have to attach it to an email, just like really bad. So now let's switch back over to Appdata. When you save data for your user as Appdata, it appears like this. Okay, you can see the top row is baby times, the name of the application, and you can see that I've got 1 kilobyte stored. It's actually less. How do we do it? It's a chunk of JSON as key value pairs. They identically reflect the shared preferences on the Android device. It's so simple. When something changes, we generate a chunk of JSON, we push it to the file. Obviously, it's not a whole kbig. I think that's the lowest thing it can say. What does this allow? Well, it allows the user to manage this data. And I'm going to talk about a couple of important points with Appdata. And that's what can the user do. So I still strongly believe the user owns this data. The user can decide what they do with it, so delete it essentially, and also see how much quota it's got. What they can't do is view this data and edit the data. So you might think that's a bit evil, but I don't think it is. I think it's really useful. It means the application can put data in there and make some assurances that nothing else, no other applications can get at the data, no user can modify the data. Okay, so it's a way of being sure that the data will have a certain format or a certain structure, really useful. But of course, it uses up your quota. So if someone's storing hundreds of gigabytes in there, you might think, I'm going to clear out that app because it doesn't need all this data, or I might get a different app. So those are the things about Appdata folder. Apart from that, it's just a regular folder in Drive. So if anyone's used the Drive SDK or the Drive API, you know that there are a few operations that take folders, folder IDs. A few that take folder IDs, and in any situation, you can use Appdata there. Another really important feature of this is that the Appdata folder is tied to a project. Okay, it's a bit of a terminology issue, and I'm sorry about this, but a project for Google APIs, is something that can, underneath it, create multiple clients. They're OAuth 2 clients, but these clients can all work as if they're the same app. Why is this useful? Well, because you create a different client for your Android app as the one you create for your web app, or for your iOS app, or for your installed app. They're all different clients, but they are part of the same project, which means your app data can be accessed from an application running on one platform as well as an application running on another platform authorized in a different way. Very, very powerful. Again, cross-platform now. So we've shown you cross-device. This is also cross-platform. Authorization is easy now on Android. Okay, you pass a scope and you pass a user account and it all takes care of it for you. Okay, that's Google Play Services. Fantastic, I'm really happy about that. The scope is a slight thing I just want to talk about. When you ask for access to a user's app data, you have to give this special scope. 2 reasons. The first one is, perhaps you might argue that you could give access for this with, for example, the full Drive scope or other scopes that have access to read all of Drive. Well, I disagree, because people have granted permission to that already. If we were to add some ability, add to the role, inflate the permissions of this, then we could be in a problem because users will be granting access to something they hadn't actually explicitly granted access to. So that's the first problem. The second thing is, how great is it that we have this fine-tuned scope? Because your application, when they're asking for access, says, I want access to be able to write and read configuration data from Google Drive. Nothing more, nothing less. Okay? Absolutely perfect. So the user's much more inclined to click that button if they know that it's just a very, very small scope of access that you're going to give them. So I mentioned the folder alias. It's just a regular folder in Drive, and when you're doing any operation with files or folders in Drive, if you can pass a folder ID, you can just pass app data instead of it. So this is for creating files, for moving files from one folder to another folder, for searching for files, for updating files. Almost any file operation can take a folder. So we just pass app data, and for the developer, the rest is entirely transparent. Of course, this is a real folder in Drive, so it has a real ID, and you can actually use that real ID if you want it to be a bit faster. Okay, that's just an optimization that I would recommend you did. So a little bit of Java code, but we'll just run through this. We get the shared preferences. If you've used Android, this is very common for you. You get the shared preferences for that actual call, gets the shared preferences for every activity running in your application. And then we subscribe a listener to it. Really cool feature of the shared preferences. This listener just logs something, but actually we respond to this notification by creating the JSON and then uploading it. So we listen to those changes. I mentioned we use a sync adapter, and that's probably the best way to do it. Come and have a chat to Virtue afterwards, because she wrestled with this a bit. So you create a sync adapter. That just defines how you're going to do the sync, when you're going to do the sync, that kind of thing. And it just takes care of the whole thing for you. I think that's really the best way of doing that. And this is just an example of the start of that. And then we find the correct file in your Appdata folder. Because this is a folder, and because slightly unhelpfully here, Google Drive allows you to have multiple files of the same name in a folder. So this implementation is a bit naive. It does a query. It looks inside Appdata. If you see Appdata in parents, it looks inside there for the right name, the correctly named file, and grabs it. Obviously, there could be more than one file, so this implementation just uses the first. As I say, slightly naive, but you could easily improve on that. So we grab that file. When we want to upload new content, I mentioned this earlier, we create something that knows about the data and the MIME type. In this case, the MIME type is application JSON. We put it all together, and send it in a single API request to Drive. Done. One API request to get the data. Here's this one. This just grabs the raw data, just makes an authorized GET request, and gives it back. It's really easy. We've made 3 API calls to the Drive API, and that immediately we have all this functionality. We also run this little loop that detects changes. So if it's changed locally, we send the data to the remote source. If it's changed in the remote place, we suck the data down and just upload it. So this is almost the entire code to implement this. Okay? Fortunately, Virtue has released it on GitHub. So if you want to use it, grab it. It's very simple. You pass a shared preferences instance to the library, to a singleton in the library, and it just does it for you. Synchronizes all your shared preferences. I suggest you have a look at the code. You could extend it. You can throw it away. You can do whatever you like with it. But it's there, and I suggest everyone has a look at that. I hope throughout this talk, I've somehow got across to you that it's not just about baby monitors. Okay, I hope. I know I added this later because I was thinking, hang on, do people just think I'm talking about baby monitors? Anything, any file that you have, any data that you create, I think you should put that in a place where the user wants it. You should put that in Google Drive. You're taking notes. You're making images. You're modifying images. You're downloading videos. You're uploading videos. Anything that involves a file, put that data put somewhere where it's useful. Okay, put the data where I want it. When I'm in the supermarket looking, I wonder which food my child likes the most. I know, I'll check. Put that data where I want it. Okay, this is a plea from me as a user. Please treat me as a user. Okay, treat your users as users. Don't treat the individual device as a user. You've got to start planning your applications to be resistant to changes in device, changes in location. Your applications really must do. I think not to do that now when all the technology is available, I think it's a bug. I really do. And I think if you do that, you will create your cross-platform, cross-device, seamless experiences, and I think Google Drive is a way to do that. Okay, so my challenge to you guys, please, go ahead, do these, make these seamless applications. Everyone will thank you. Thanks very much. Questions? Oh, I should say before the questions, I'll be available on the Chrome and Apps sandbox on level 3 if you want a longer question or you don't feel like getting up in front of this crowd and talking.
OK, question. How does the shared data get deleted from Google Drive if somebody uninstalls the app? Does that data just live there forever?
So when you uninstall an app, we have a nice flow there. The user is prompted to say, this app still has some hidden application data. Would you like to delete it or not? Okay, so we cover that case. You might consider an instance where you say, I don't want this app installed, but I want to keep the data around in case one day I do install it again. So that's that case, but we cover that. But the user is prompted, delete this data if you're going to install it, uninstall the app.
OK, thanks.
Thanks.
This isn't a question. It's just a tip. For a really good example of an app developed by one guy who does this, Sleep as Android is a sleep data collection tool with a plugin called Stats as Android, which gives you the charts inside the app but uses spreadsheets for the raw data.
Okay, uses Google Spreadsheets? Or?
Yeah, uses Google Spreadsheets.
Wow, okay.
So if anybody wants to see an example, that's an app that might be worth.
So I wish you'd told me this before, because that would have saved me writing an app, but like. But thank you. Sleep has Android.
Hi. In terms of compliance, and I'm thinking about Google Apps Enterprise, could it be possible for me to, have the control over that properties file, over that configuration file, to make, a revision, inspectioning that file for complying purposes?
Yeah. So you're talking about the configuration file in Appdata.
Yeah. Because
sorry. Go on.
Because I saw that you can't actually view or edit the contents for the file.
So the user can't, but the developer can. Okay. So the application can. And it's a regular file in Drive, so it has all the other features. You can't share it. That's one feature it doesn't have. But you can look at revision history and other things like that. So actually, this is a nice version file in your Drive.
Great.
It's useful and definitely covers that case.
What happens if two users modify at the same time? How do you handle the conflicts on Drive?
So you don't, and the world just explodes. So in this use case, and I specifically avoided this, so two things. One, the use case, we don't really cover it. The last change wins in this case, and that's not exactly good for this. But if you look at the use case, I'm not really going to go around with two devices in one hand, one device in one hand and one device in another hand and start like changing the configuration. It might happen that we're collecting data. So I don't think that particularly fits the use case. But what we do have is this awesome product called the Real-Time API. Anyone heard of this or seen the Real-Time API? Yeah. So this is specifically designed for that use case. I suggest you go and read about it. It provides all the conflict resolution, all the updating, everything there. And we have a session about that tomorrow. So we have a session, so please come along. Two of the hardcore engineers are going to tell you how it works, so that's exciting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
I want to ask a question. What can you do for the interconnection of Google Drive and Microsoft Office 365?
So,
what's in my T-shirt?
So we had this chat earlier today, but I'll just go over what we said. So this gentleman is really interested in writing some kind of interconnection software between Google Drive and Office 365. Is that right?
API can just transfer document in one direction.
Right.
Cannot.
So the Google Drive API allows you to import and export data. Okay, so it's a two-way data transfer. And the formats that we use, we have some proprietary formats that belong to Microsoft, for example, docx and this kind of thing, which I think would be perfect for interfacing with Office 365. But there are other formats. I showed you CSV. There's HTML, of course, import and export from there, PDF, various formats, all the open Office formats. So I think you can write that connector. I don't think you're going to have a problem there.
I submit an IETF Intellectual Chapter and about this topic. Please pay more attention to.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you've got my email address. We'll keep talking about this. Don't worry.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Brilliant. Thank you for coming. Come and chat to me later. Oh, you've got a question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Hold the applause.
Sorry. So actually there are two questions. One is, are you planning some support in terms of patterns or APIs for third-party like iOS or Microsoft Stack apps to use Google Drive? Second question is, if I write an app and I want to give the user both the privacy of their own Google Drive, but still I would want to cover the quota of them. You know what I mean? So I can. So I don't run into trouble when they hit the 5 GB limit?
Right.
Is there anything you're thinking about that?
So let's start with the first question first. Okay. Essentially, yes. Okay. We want to make the experience as easy as possible. Okay, we launched the Drive API actually a year ago. So still at the moment, it's pretty raw state. We're still trying to work out the use cases. And of course, in an ideal world, and I can't really comment on our future plans, but in an ideal world, if priorities were logically designed, yes, we would have libraries that make it crazy easy, as my colleague Stephen says, crazy easy to do this stuff. Just a single call, nothing else. So it's definitely in our plans. We want that to be as simple as possible. Right, second question?
It was about the quota on and the app owner, who owns the quota, and if the app owner can take over.
So I'm quite strongly of the belief that this is the user's data and the user should pay for the quota. Actually, all the smart people in the audience will notice that this application didn't cost the user any quota because it's using Google Spreadsheets as a backend, which can be as big as you like, and they don't take up any quota. So I'm not suggesting you go out and do that, but this app doesn't use any of the user's quota. It uses 1 kilobyte, and you know that's nothing.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.